Hey everyone, this is your friend Kent Seed Odds, and I'm joined by my friend Preethi Kasireddy. Say hi, Preethi.
Hey, Kat.
Preethi and I met years and years ago. I actually don't remember exactly how we first got introduced. Do you remember?
I think it was on the internet through one of my blog posts or something.
Yeah. I tend to meet a lot of people on the internet. Yeah, so it's been a pleasure to know Preethi, and I'm excited for you all to get to know her. Preethi, could you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell the audience who you are and kind of the things you're interested in and that kind of thing.
Sure. This is always a tough question for me because my identity has evolved over time. But overall, I think I would classify myself as a blogger. I write a lot, and Kent and some of the JavaScript community may have known me through my blog posts in the past.
Mm,
Previously, I've worked at Andreessen Horowitz. I was a partner there. After that, I left and I taught myself how to code, and then I joined Coinbase as an engineer. And then after that, I ended up starting my own company, and now I'm back to blogging again.
yeah, now I remember reading your story of your transition. I think that was probably the first blog post I read of yours was about that transition to developer, and I was inspired by your story. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I was an engineer in college, but I wasn't a software engineer. So I was a systems engineer, and I never really even knew what software engineering was. I thought it was just a bunch of nerds in a basement, like coding. And at least that was my definition of it because all the software engineers I saw on campus just looked really nerdy, and I never wanted to be a nerd. So I never even
Mm,
thought to look into software engineering. And then when I joined Andreessen Horowitz, and I would meet entrepreneurs every single day. Like I met like thousands of entrepreneurs over the course of 2 years I was there. And basically, what I realized is like software engineering is how these entrepreneurs what these entrepreneurs use to change the world. Like they're able to code the future they believe in using software engineering. And I was like, wow, this is an amazing skill set to have because then it allows you to build whatever you want and shape the world in different ways. And even if it doesn't mean starting a company and building a revolutionary company, you can change the world in small, tiny ways that you just couldn't do before.
mm,
And I felt like it also gives you access to a whole other underworld that you just simply cannot understand. Like, I would try to figure out how some of these technologies would work. And I was handicapped because I didn't really understand how, the technology stack behind it worked. And so
mm,
I was like, I felt like some part of me was missing as an engineer. And I started to teach myself how to code. And even though I failed a lot in the beginning, I was not very good at all. I kept trying and trying and trying. And then at some point, I hit this like inflection point where it just clicked for me. And I became so passionate about it. And I decided to leave and quit the amazing job I had at Andreessen
mm.
Horowitz to teach myself how to code. And I did that, and that's how I got into the JavaScript community because I was teaching myself JavaScript, and yeah.
Yeah, I am. I'm inspired by that story, and I remember reading it years ago, and just being inspired that you decided to take a step down, I guess, on the corporate ladder or whatever we want to call that, where you're really successful and experienced in what you are doing, and decide to, make a switch career wise, and kind of start from square one again. And it sounds like it was just because you were inspired by what was possible, by what this new skill set could enable you to do, and also there was just something that drew you toward um, being able to develop software. There was some passion there. Where do you think that comes from?
The passion for software.
Yeah, or just like the willingness to take the risk that you did.
Oh, okay. Honestly, like I think it's if I had to be completely honest, it's just from my stubbornness and desire to just follow my heart. And ever since I was a child, I was not one of those kids who just did one sport and could do that for like 10 years and stick to it forever. Like I just genuinely was very curious, and so I did a few different sports, and I'd like to be follow my passions and do what I thought I wanted to do at that moment. And so in this case, like, yeah, going up a corporate ladder at VC was definitely one path, but I just didn't feel like, for me personally, it was the optimal path. There's just so much more in the world that I knew I was passionate about, and then I knew that I wanted to learn about. And at the time I was only 23, and I felt like if I really want to just become a venture capitalist, I can do that when I'm like 40. But
Hmm.
right now was the opportunity for me to like go out there and learn about the world, explore, and just be like hungry for knowledge and building. And I always think the greatest artists also reinvent themselves often, because if you're
Hmm.
doing the same thing over and over again, like times change, right? And
Hmm.
as an artist, like you need to be able to reinvent yourself all the time. And I think fundamentally I operate more like an artist and a creative, in the sense that I I like to create, and I know that times change, and if I want to do something different, I need to like reinvent myself. And I've never been afraid of sort of reinventing myself in that way. And so learning to code
Hmm.
to me, like I think a lot of people viewed it as like, wow, you're giving up a lot, like you're giving up this really amazing career. I think that's a really good way to look at it, but that's like a sort of like a glass half empty way to look at it. The other way to think
Hmm.
about it is like, what what else can I do with this new skill set than what I have, that I just couldn't do if I continued down this path without that skill set. And like I said, like if I really want to go to VC, I'm pretty sure I can make that happen. But now with the new skill set I have, I can do VC plus so much more. And I was like, okay, it's the opportunity is just so much bigger on the other end. So I can't imagine not taking it.
Yeah, something interesting that kind of came to my mind as you were talking there was that like the early stages of when you're just learning a new skill, and especially I think lots of us felt that maybe when we were teenagers, or going through college, or whatever it was that we went through to get to the career path that we're on right now. There's like some excitement, maybe frustration, maybe even some fear, if there's a lot riding on the line of you succeeding. But there's something unique and special to that period of personal improvement, and working on yourself and your own skills. Um, and I think we kind of lose that, and after a while, we fall into the drudgery of just everyday life, where we're applying the same skills that we learned, 10 years ago or whatever, um, and we stop innovating on ourselves. Like maybe we're innovating with the skills that we've developed, and that's awesome, but we stop innovating on ourselves, and discovering new capabilities, or in improving new capabilities within ourselves, and discovering new hobbies or interests that we might have. If we just stay so focused on what we have now, and maybe on what the world is telling us, where our value lies, I guess.
Exactly. And I think I mean, this is such a hard thing for people to navigate, because I think when we're young, we have all these dreams and aspirations to, follow our passions, or become this and become that. And then you kind of grow older and older, and then society sort of puts all these expectations on you of what you think you should be doing, what they think you should be doing. And oftentimes, we're not at an age when we're trying getting into the job market where we've truly found our passion, quote unquote. So we give into a job or a role that will make do for the expectations that society has. But then our
Mm,
dreams kind of get shoved under a rug, and then by the time you want to actually realize those dreams, or even have the ability to go back and reevaluate them, it might be even too late. So
Mm.
I really think that um, I think I think like I think the key thing that's missing here is when you're young, people are not encouraged to, how do I put this? Like they're not they're almost like objectively logic they're given more logical routes of how to follow their life and career and everything, because logic is the best way to justify your decision. Like, okay, like if you pursue this path you'll make the most amount of money, or if you pursue this path it'll be the safest, if you provide
Mm.
pursue this path it'll be the most I don't know, like you get the best retirement, whatever it is. Like there's like
Mm.
logical reasons why certain career paths make sense, but all the illogical paths um, are there's no reason or rhyme or reason to follow them, so people don't encourage you to follow them. And
Mm.
sometimes your dreams and aspirations follow in those paths. And I don't mean to sound weird or crazy, but I think like sometimes the illogical paths are actually probably the right answer, and the logical one might not be the right answer. And I know I started to realize think about this a lot over the last year or so, because I continue to meet people, especially who are, 5, 10 years older than me. I'm 29, people who are like 35, 40, who they've accomplished a lot in their life. They've started a company, or they're even rich, or they um you know progressed along the career ladder, or they're a VP at something or whatever it is.
Mm.
They're like fundamentally unhappy, and I'm like,
Mm.
okay, like why are people, some of the most successful people, unhappy? And I think I realized, like, I don't think they truly pursued like their dream per se. They kind of did what society laid out for them, sort of the
Mm.
ABC path, but they never explored the uncharted path, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that just makes so much sense. And honestly, I wonder why we're not, why we don't talk about this more, why we're not mindful. I think if you had a big group of people in a room and brought them together and said, okay, how many of you think that money is going to buy you happiness or whatever, or like that happiness just comes from being financially successful or professionally successful. I think most people would say no, like that's not what happiness comes from. But then there's a disconnect, because I think lots of us are maybe it's just because we're too busy trying to make ends meet to stop and think about where am I going to really find happiness. I don't know, but there's um, for some reason we still just pursue this stuff that we admit to ourselves that will not bring us happiness, rather than pursuing the things that we want to, or that we feel, have a dream about, not like an actual dream, maybe an actual dream, but like have this desire in us that I want this thing to exist. I want to be a part of this movement. I want this in my life. And we kind of put those things to the side, because the world tells us that we can't have those things until we have secured for ourselves this, I don't know, a nest egg or something like that. That's a shame.
Exactly. And it's there's a few things I want to hit on, which is one, again, it comes back to the fact that, like, I think the world is driven by logic, and what's objectively measurable is what's valued. And if something can't be objectively measured, then it's hard for people to place a value on that. And so that's why more creative or other endeavors are just less valued. Like, why do you think it's
Mm.
less valuable to? Why do you think you make no money as an artist or a writer compared to how much money you can make as like a hedge fund analyst, right?
Mm.
Like, as
Yeah.
a hedge fund manager, like you're literally making billions of dollars a year. Or sorry, like the fund is making billions of dollars a year. You're probably making millions of dollars a year, um,
Mm-hmm.
because the world values that. Because that's just how it works. It's objectively quantifiable, whereas like art is not, and writing is not.
Right.
So though, so as a result, we're just, there's no, the incentives are not there, quote unquote, for you to pursue the more passionate routes. But I think a lot of that, I think what's really cool right now is a lot of that is starting to change, where you're starting to see people who, you know, are truly passionate about these things can actually build, like, even if it's not your entire life's earnings, like you can build some portion of your earnings pursuing your passion, and maybe you do the other
Mm.
portion doing your regular job. But there's
Mm-hmm.
so many tools online now to do that. And you know, like with I'm seeing all the creators on Instagram and TikTok and, you know, Medium and all these places that just gives you access to all these things to actually pursue your passion. So I think we're living in a day and age where finally people can actually make a decent living off of pursuing, quote unquote, their passions. And I want to cover the second point, which is money. And I think like I think oftentimes, yeah, like even the richest people, just you know, and I've met really rich people too. They're not the happiest people. There's absolutely zero correlation between how much money you have and how happy you are
Mm.
beyond a certain point of money. Like, yeah,
Right.
if more money makes you happy until a certain point, and then beyond that point, there's actually like no correlation. And there's even charts and data to show this, and it makes sense because you know, I've lived in extreme low income family. Like I was, when we were growing up, we were really poor, and then I'm not poor anymore, but I'm not like uber rich either, but I'm better than I was when I was a child. And I can
Mm-hmm.
even see the difference in myself, right? Like when I get used to certain comforts, like being able to order an Uber to get to places versus walking or taking the bus. Um, all these comforts, like it just it it makes you lose your drive and your passions. And I don't know, like I don't like, and none of it, I don't know if it really makes me happy that I can take an Uber. There was almost like some pride I took in being able to walk and take a bus to a place because it felt like I did something. I don't know, like I don't know how to, I'm not sure how to even explain this in words, but like money at a certain point, like I think what I realized is you can get really comfortable, and it can almost make you not want to work hard to pursue your passions because
Mm-hmm.
it comes at odds almost. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
so comfortable that you don't want to get out of your comfort zone to work hard to make your passions happen. So too much money can actually be counterproductive to you pursuing your passions and dreams and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think that I have heard a lot of studies where, um, you know, you overlay money over happiness, and it scoops up, and then it plateaus, and then it dives down pretty fast. And of course, that's not going to be cross applicable to everybody in the world. Some people find ways to have lots of money and be happy, but
Yeah.
I do think that um, if our pursuit is worldly acclaim and possessions and that kind of thing, then those are empty and hollow things that and maybe your pursuit is worldly wealth, so that you can go off and do wonderful things with it, and maybe that's where you can find satisfaction and fulfillment and happiness out of having so much wealth. And so that's an avenue you can take, I guess. But I really like this idea that you're pushing forward of focusing on the things that you're passionate about, or that the dreams that you have, just following your heart in that way. And that can be a mechanism to provide more real value in the world than if you're just kind of guessing at what you can do to provide value in the world. Because I think that like we could say, oh, well, I'm really no good. Well, I don't want to give any specific examples, but if we just kind of say, you know what, I really have this dream of one day writing a novel. I guess I am going to give an example, but instead of doing that, I'm going to uh, go off and be a hedge fund manager because that's what my dad did. That's what his dad did, and that's just what we do, and that's how I'm going to sustain the lifestyle that I'm used to. Um, then there's that dream, and there's a huge amount of value that you could provide if you're doing the thing that you're excited and passionate and that you dream of doing, that will never be realized because you're so busy trying to satisfy other people's expectations or even your own unfair expectations of yourself.
Yeah, and I don't like and exactly. And I don't mean to overplay the need to find your passion because I think some where people sometimes struggle is like, oh, like I haven't found my passion and am I screwed? Like I don't I'm like, I'm 30, I'm not passionate about anything. And I think like sometimes maybe passion is not often maybe even the wrong word, but it's like it's it's just like things that you genuinely enjoy doing. It doesn't even have to be that it's your like single life's passion. But
Sure.
yeah, like and uh and I think there's an interesting Anne Ryan quote where she says um like like I think in going to be to your point about like doing what you think other people want you to do versus doing what you self want yourself to do. And this is something I've thought about a lot because one feels selfless, right? You're giving for the world, you're changing the world by doing something that the world wants you to do, versus doing what you yourself want to do, which is very selfish, and serves your
Hmm.
own purpose, but doesn't serve the world. But she said something interesting where she was like, being selfless is actually selfish because
Mm.
why are you selfless, right? Why do you care to do something for the world? um it's because it makes you feel good, and it's like you're doing it for yourself in the end, so you can never let go of this idea that you're inherently selfish. um,
Hmm.
Everything you do, whether it's your desire to have kids, yeah, it does help the world, but it's also because like you feel like you fulfill a purpose in life. And so we have to just admit that like we can argue that literally everything we do is selfish, in which case
Mm.
I think you have to pick and choose where you want to be quote unquote selfish. And I think it's okay to be selfish about doing things that truly make you happy, because a happier you will put out more energy, more good energy in the world, and you'll naturally do better work as a result. um,
Hmm.
and they'll down the line they'll have like much higher value than you doing something suboptimally in a less passionate way, but in the end like that has actually less value in the world. Because I know, at least I'm speaking for me personally, I know that like if I'm interested in a topic, in a subject, in a skill, in something, then I put my 110% into it, and as a result, like I just get I'm able to do a lot and accomplish a lot with that. But if I'm, kind of 50% there, it's just nowhere nearly as my output is not nearly as good as when I'm passionate, like when I'm like interested in it and I'm happy doing it, right?
Hmm.
So I think like I actually think more value would be created in this world if people truly did the things that made them that they felt they're good at, and that makes them happy.
Absolutely. And you know what? I agree with that totally. Like, I think that if everybody just focused on the things that they really were excited about, wanted to do, wholesome things, of course. If we're all just sitting around playing video games, nothing's going to get done. But I don't think most people have that an actual passion. I'd consider that maybe more of an addiction. But if people were intrinsically motivated to do the things that they were doing because it's things that they're really passionate about, I do think that we would create more value in the world. And I would also say that maybe more important than the amount of value that you can create in the world, I'm not going to say maybe, this absolutely more important than the value you create in the world is the happiness level that you feel in your own life. And the value that you can create as a side effect of the happiness that you and satisfaction that you get from your own life.
Exactly.
And so, absolutely, being selfish, like, is, being self-interested in your own true happiness. And I'm not talking about, the fleeting happiness that, that you can get from, I don't know, like, you get that from getting buzzed or whatever. Not that kind of happiness, but actual true joy and satisfaction out of life. Um, when you get that, I do believe we'll also get to a point in the world where, you're providing more value to the world. So it's all upside, no downside there.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you can think of many examples. For example, one that I probably relate to you on is writing, and blogging,
Mm,
in the sense that, like, a lot of people can't say this, but like, I'm genuinely passionate about writing. I genuinely enjoy like publishing posts, and genuinely enjoy the process of teaching via my writing.
mhm,
And I know I've impacted tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people through my blog posts, because I get messages almost every day saying like, okay, this inspired me. And so I know this is true. I know that if you truly do what you are excited about, and what gets you up in the morning, and what makes you excited, and what makes you feel good, then that energy that you put out, the energy, for example, that I put out in my posts, um, is the I can feel the rebound of it by the messages that I get from people who are, thanking me or whatever for that post. So I think that's a concrete example of a way that, like, if you're happy, the energy that you put out in the world through your happiness and through your work will be shown by that.
absolutely. And even if the work that you create in doing that, doesn't reach the number of people that, alternative work could reach. For example, I I decided to start writing a novel last year for, National Novel Writing Month, and not very many people have read it. It's not a very good novel, and still in the editing process, but, um, it was just so enormously, challenging and satisfying and fulfilling for me, and it was really a transformative experience, for me, and it made a really big impact on my life. And I have to believe that despite the enormous amount of hours that I spent writing, I received a positive return on that investment in my, throughput, in general in life. Like, before that, my hobby was basically my job, and I just loved coding. And I have a family. I have 4 kids and a wife, and I spend plenty of time with them. But outside of spending time with them, I was always coding, or yeah, like doing open source, whatever. And when I found the, novel writing as an outlet, a creative outlet, it changed things for me in a really positive way. And I think that it made me, um, maybe I'm not pushing out as many releases to my open source libraries, but the ones that I do, are probably higher quality just because my general attitude is better. And even if they weren't, at the end of the day, like, nothing matters quite so much as the happiness level of society in general. And so I think anything that's going to increase the happiness level of people is a positive thing for the world, even if the, quote unquote value is reduced. So either way, um, I think focusing on the things that, and actually that was a dream of mine when I was a kid. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a novel writer. And so taking that opportunity and that, significant amount of time to try and make that happen, really paid off, and is still paying off. I'm still working on it. It's just been an awesome experience for me. Um, yeah, looking for those things that I dreamed of doing, and now that I'm an adult and I have responsibilities and stuff, I kind of have lost some of those dreams, and looking back and trying to identify some of those. has just been a really positive experience for me.
Yeah, and that's an amazing story. It's really cool that you wrote the novel. And that's exactly what I mean. It's I see it. I see it in people who, because that energy is so so hard to create artificially. Like
Mm,
it only comes when you like, and everyone's different. That energy comes for different people and different things. And
mm,
it's one of those things, it's a life force that's honestly just like you cannot explain it. You cannot put words on it. It's not objective. It's just there. And that because the energy is so hard to create artificially, I think that's what makes it so valuable and powerful. And to
mm,
waste that away, and or suppress it doing things that doesn't give you that energy. I just think, I don't know, you only live once, right? So why would you do that? That's kind of how I
hmm.
think about it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, so Preeti, we're coming down on our time here, and I just want to give folks the homework. So, for the homework for this episode, we want you to go back in time. Maybe go on a walk or something, just like or on a drive. Next time you're driving in your commute, whatever, don't turn on the podcast. Turn on, like, pause this podcast right now. You could wherever you're listening to it, you're probably in a situation you could do this. But go back in your mind and think about the dreams that you had when you were a child and reevaluate those dreams now. Because when you were a kid, you probably couldn't make those things happen, but maybe you can make those things happen now. And there's just something that happens between childhood and adulthood where we suppress those dreams or those passions because they're not practical or they aren't going to get us the success that we want out of life or whatever. But reevaluate them now and consider taking the leap of of doing something that may not seem like the most logical choice. So that's our homework for you. Do you have anything to say about that, Preeti?
Yeah, and I'll just say a couple last things. One is that there's this path that we're talking about is not the easy one either, because it's not the one that's charted, like I said earlier,
Mm,
and it's not the one that gives you safety nets or a rule book or blog posts to follow or like tutorials. Like there's like it's kind of one of those things where if you like, it's something that you have to kind of, you're on your own and you have to think independently about sort of how to navigate this. And that's not to say there's not communities and other people out there who are doing the things you probably want to do, but it just takes you stepping out of your comfort zone to explore those, um, and rather than trying to find the path that's given. So I think, and I often find that people don't do that because they're scared of taking that uncharted path. But I think if you just take that step and just try it once, even if you don't realize you hate it, you hate the idea of charting your own path. You rather live a more comfortable life, and you come back to that. That's fine. But I think like at least give it a shot once rather than never trying that in your entire life. Um,
hmm.
so that's kind of where I'd end it.
Love it. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Preeti, so much for giving us some of your time today to chat with me. And what's the best place for people to reach out to you on the internet if they would like to?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at IAM_Preethi, and so you can just reach me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was an enlightening conversation. And yeah, we'll see everyone next time.
Thanks, Kent. Bye.
Bye.